Glad to have you. I'm Carter Semino, host of Acadiana Cast Presents. Today we have a very special guest. It is Chaz Roberts. Now, if you're familiar with Acadiana Cast Network and some of the podcasts that we've done, you've obviously heard of Law Have Mercy, a podcast that Chaz hosts. He was actually my first client with Acadiana Casts, so really excited. It's about time we finally have him in the chair. I wanted to make sure things were nice and rolling steadily before, show off my production to Chaz, even though I've been doing work with him for the past year and a half or so. But we're going to get into his podcast, talk about his upbringing in Cecilia, some things with the law. We'll shoot the bull about some other stuff and just have a good conversation. Chaz is no stranger to podcasting, obviously, and talking. He's a lawyer for damn sake. So with that being said, Chaz, you're here in the chair over at the Acadiana Cast Studios where we first met. I can't even remember when that was. It just seems so long ago, but also like yesterday.
Yeah, it's come a long way. Thanks for having me, man, and thank you for all you do in the podcast space and producing Law Have Mercy. I feel like you were in my closet this morning because you were wearing the exact same thing as me almost.
Yeah, well, I picked up a little bit of merch along the way.
Yeah,
working
man.
with you.
But it's been an awesome journey. You've been an amazing producer, and thank you for getting me into the space because you actually reached out to me. I didn't realize I was your first client. Now I feel like the guinea pig here. But and look, I was thinking about doing podcasts. I was talking about it, but I didn't have the capability. And you had the cameras, the setup, the know-how, the knowledge. I mean, it's a quote unquote the production, but it's quite a production to put on a podcast. And you were able to get in there and streamline it, and it's been awesome. And it's been cool getting to know you and yeah, man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So let's talk a little bit about that before we kind of get into who Chaz is. So with Law Have Mercy, I reached out to you, like you said, because I saw you on social media. I've been following you for a little bit. I think almost even either right after or at the very end of my news days when I was at News 15. And I saw this guy who was giving just kind of legal tips, but in a laid back and personable way for my dumbass to understand, and I was like, man, this guy, he's got something going here with the social media thing and like creating his own content. And I wonder if he'd be interested in, shooting a podcast. And quite frankly, you're probably the only client I have that I actually reached out to first. And you were willing to take a chance on me. And I've always been appreciative of you for that. So, but Law Have Mercy, what did it kind of start as? And then getting into 2025, what does it kind of become?
Yeah, so I needed an angle, right? And I thought it was going to be just a long-form version of my social media. And my social media is I talk about legal tips. And the whole laid-back style, that's just me. I mean, I can't really fake that. That was just me trying to be authentic. And so the way you describe it as, like, that's kind of my... It is what it is. That's the way I talk. That's the way I act. And I'm always big on like educating the public. Like that's my way to give back. If it brings business, great. But I feel a duty to give legal information because I've spent a lot of money on a legal education that not a lot of people have access to give back to the public. And we'll get into that later about where I'm from, but serving my people, right? And so the podcast was interesting because then I could speak kind of in long form, right? Because social media, you want to talk 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and it's like, hey, you've been hurt in a car wreck, you need to do these 4 things. Well, there's a lot of nuance there, and that's a whole 30-minute conversation, hour-long conversation. Then I realized like I had all these cool friends who were in other areas of law, and I'd bring them on the podcast and like ask them questions about their particular area of law, like divorce, like criminal law, like intellectual property and all those areas. And so that was sort of the first year, maybe, year and a quarter of what we did. And that was great. And then now I'm realizing like, man, I have a lot of other interests and I know a lot of other interesting people who can serve that same audience that I've built in. And so the podcast has sort of evolved. Like just recently I had Joe Grunick, I had Cupid, I had, different areas, just business owners, and they all have little nuggets that people can pick up on. And it's not some influencer in Miami on the beach. It's someone down the street from you who's living the same life as you, who works out at Reds with you, and you can learn from them. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where the evolution has taken me, and it's been exciting.
Yeah. So like to your point, when we first started, it was almost a little too law heavy. And that you could get caught in the weeds of two lawyers going back and forth. And you kind of put the kibosh on that and made it a little more personal, started showing more of your personality, less of, just putting it all on the guests to try and do it. And don't get me wrong, you guys.
It's question, answer, question, answer, question.
And you prep the guest a bunch.
Yeah.
But I feel like what it is now, you see more of your personality and what, I think what makes your content so great when it comes to social media. And it's you. It's Chaz Roberts, showing yourself, but also valuetainment, right? You're getting some good information, but, you're having a good conversation along the way as well.
Yeah, that's a function of a couple of things. Like, number one, our guests are amateurs. They're not skilled podcast people. And so when you put the lights on, you put the cameras on, they tense up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I tensed up, right? And so now with the reps, just like on social media, if you look at my old videos, terrible. Now, right. A little bit better. Maybe not good, but better. And so as a podcaster, I've become better just doing the reps. And so I realized like my personality needed to come through more to make it more entertaining, because I'm a great guy to have a beer with. I'm a great guy to have coffee with, right? I like to think so anyway. That's what my wife tells me. But no, I mean, in podcasts, I just kind of, I thought it was more of a QA. No, it's not, man. Forget all this stuff is here and just have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And about the law heavy part, man, if you are getting a divorce or thinking about getting a divorce, you put on that episode of me and Wes Gauger. We had 2 episodes. It is worth $3,000 of value for you for free.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, I will swear on the Bible. It is an immense amount of amazing information for you for free. But if you're happily married and not thinking about getting a divorce or whatever, have no curiosity in divorce, you may not listen to an hour of Q&A. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of been some of the things that I've realized over time is like, it's law heavy. So I got to kind of back up from that. You deal with a lot of artists. You are an artist. Like, people evolve over time. So you're not playing the same tracks that you played when you first started, right? So it's been a constant evolution, and I think if you're not evolving, you're dying, right?
I think there's definitely times when, to make your content more dynamic, to have those little more like in-depth conversations about a certain law topic that could be, like you said, $3,000 worth of value to someone going through that specific situation. But also having someone on like a Cupid's
an amazing guy, and he's a great ambassador of our community. Mm-hmm. And he was really interesting. He opened up about some things that he never opened up about before, and because no one ever sat down with him for an hour and talked to him. So I was super proud of that episode. But then he talked about almost getting killed by a bull. And we talked about the personal injury case that he was dealing with, right? Or he deals with contracts, and he deals with, legal stuff all the time. And so we could kind of offshoot some of that, and it's still, my lawyer brain's still going to go to that, but there's an immense amount of value other than the law.
Right. Now, how does a boy from Cecilia, Louisiana become an attorney?
Man, that is a great question. I'm super proud of my upbringing in Cecilia, man. It was a great place to grow up, and probably 98% of the guy that you see today was developed there. I grew up, I was the first French immersion class.
Wow.
I didn't know if you knew that. So we took science and social studies and even math some years in French completely. They would bring in teachers from France or Canada, and they would speak only French. And if you're immersed in the language, you will learn the language. And I can still speak French. I can still understand a lot of French. I can still speak it, but you kind of have to practice it. So I was telling Lath this, man, some of the most charismatic people I've met in my entire life across the world, and I've been to a lot of places, are still from Cecilia, Louisiana. My dad would go to a grocery store and have 10 people around him, and he'd be telling stories. And so if you can get educated and take that next level, like, fortunately I had some resources. I became a lawyer. Thank you, TOPS. Thank you, student loans. If you can harness those storytelling skills and the joie de vivre and the French background and growing up in a culturally diverse place and understand people's struggles, if you can put that all together, man, it makes you a powerhouse. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very proud of my upbringing, and I still try to support that community and I wave the flag. And someone asked me one time, they're like, do you ever get worried that like you talk so much about like Cecilia that you'll maybe offend Opelousas or Bro Bridge or Ville Platte? I said, no, not at all, because I'm not an ambassador. I am an ambassador for Cecilia, right? But what I'm trying to do is inspire people to not forget where they come from. And I don't care what community you're from. Be proud of that, give love to that, and go back and support it and try to inspire the next guy. And, you know, for a while I thought I was inspiring people to be a lawyer and that kind of thing, or a professional. But now I'm inspiring people to get into podcasting. Hey, if I could do it, you could do it. YouTube, social media, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's registering. That's been the feedback I've had from kids going back.
Yeah, and I've seen just guests come on your show who I've heard them tell you to your face, like, hey man, like I'm starting to get into content because I saw you do it. And, I'm not, I'm no Chaz Roberts,
right?
But I'm figuring out. So yeah, so I can speak to that.
That's funny. And you know, when people say, oh, I'm no Chaz Roberts, that's super flattering, super humbling, right? I'm blushing right now. But I was as insecure as anybody. Like, you think I want to stick my head out the hole? If you stick your head, like the whack-a-mole game, right? If you stay under, you're not going to get whacked. If you stick your head out, you might get whacked. Mm-hmm. And so I was filled with insecurity, man. I don't want to be that guy. I thought people could say, look at this guy. He's trying to be an influencer or something. Like, you got to deal with the trolls and the haters and everything else. Mm-hmm. But the best quote I have about that is, Chase Bank called. They don't take people's opinions on deposit. And so if I can do something to help my business in any way, I'm going to do it, man.
Yeah.
Because, you know, don't let other people's opinions stop you from supporting your business, because I believe in my business. I have a duty and a responsibility to tell people about what I do, because I think I'm the best at what I do. Mm-hmm. And so if I don't do it, I'm letting them down.
Well, I love what you said, you know, never forget where you came from. It's kind of a mantra of, in this office where Acadiana Casa is also Love of People nonprofit, and the executive director, John Williams, he says that all the time. We just had our community Thanksgiving in Sunset and where he's from. And that's kind of where it started, just, you know, not forgetting where you come from. Started with like 250 meals like the first year. Now in the 11th year, we did 5,000 meals across Acadiana.
That's cool.
And where I wanted to bring it back to is a shout out to Poche's, right from your neck of the woods, because they kind of streamlined our entire rice dressing operation, and it's one of the best pieces of the Thanksgiving meal that we were able to give. So
Gerald and I talked about Poche's when he was on the podcast, and I said, hey, you want to change your life? Go get a backbone stew during the week, and it's one of the best plate lunches you're ever gonna have in your life.
I still need to go do that.
He was talking about the crawfish and the catfish. I said, man, Poche's has it going on, man.
Yeah, man, Mr. Poche rocks. He's been such a good support for us. We got to get you involved and maybe bring community Thanksgiving out to the Cecilia Bro Bridge
I would
area.
love that, man.
Yeah,
I would love that. You know, we don't realize how many people have like food insecurity. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's some government assistance, but man, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. And there's kids that go to school just to eat, man. And I remember when they brought the breakfast program there, and you know, so it's affecting all of our communities.
Yeah, it just goes to show the power of, you know, not just social media, but doing good things in your community, or just inspiring things. You know, for you, doing some of the stuff that you're doing is inspiring others to step up and help themselves or their business and creating content or whatever it might be, or learning a little bit more about the law. And then, you know, from the Love of People thing through, or Community Thanksgiving specifically, other business owners kind of saw what John was doing, and then they wanted to get involved. And then we got CBM Technology from Bro Bridge heavily involved. We got Industrial Safety Solutions in Youngsville heavily involved. Taco Sisters, Acadian Total Security. So all these different businesses are coming together to help our community.
That's beautiful, man. Look, I'm 40 years old. I just turned 40.
Whoa.
And I bootstrapped my business from the time I was 26 years old to now. And I didn't take a loan from a bank. I literally bootstrapped it and made $1 and $2 and $3 and then reinvested it. And it's taken all of that. It's taken me 15 years to get where I am right now. And I'm good. Like the Kurt Vonnegut quote, I have enough. Mm-hmm. And so the next portion of my life, 10 to 50, 10 to 6, 10. 40 to 50, 40 to 60, that next time period of my life, I want to get into things like that. And I want to give back. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, man, when you give, you get back tenfold, hundredfold, thousandfold. And, you know, just is the way the world works.
It tails all the time.
And maybe it's because you're so spiritually and mentally fulfilled that you're open to the world, to the universe, and things come back to you. Or if it's just good karma or blessings or whatever religion you are, but it works, man. And I have the tools. I just need to build out the team to be able to get involved in those things. And I plan on spending a large portion of my time the next couple decades doing those types of things.
Well, we can definitely get you hooked up there. So we'll talk off camera about that. But, you know, you mentioned, you know, bootstrapping your business to where it is now. What would be your advice to someone, if any? I'm sure that you've got a bunch of nuggets, but to starting and growing a business with nothing.
Spend less than you make.
Easier said than done.
Right. So you got to get out there. Like, you can have the best product or service in the world. If people don't know about you, they can't hire you. Right. And on the other side, so many people want all this business, but the back of the house isn't right. You know, if you have a restaurant and you pack the place, well, you're a great marketer, but if the food isn't good, they're only going to come one time. And so what I did was I made sure that my foundation of the legal services that I represent, that I offer, was perfect, or as close to perfect as possible. I was doing everything. I mean, when I started my business, man, I go to the post office. I would lick the envelopes. I did everything. So now when I have a problem and my team has grown, and it's still a small team for the amount of cases we have and the type of cases we have, everything is just tight because I know every part of the process. I know how to do everything from start to, I sweep the floor, I take the trash out. I know everything there is. So my advice is twofold. Number one is figure out a way to get your name out there. And I don't care if it's shaking hands, going to talk to the senior citizens or doing social media, front-facing videos. Find a way to get yourself out there, but simultaneously have a good or service to offer and stand by it. And if you wouldn't buy from yourself, how can you expect someone else to buy from you?
Yeah, no, that's great advice.
And spend less than you make. You know, I wish I would have reinvested more into my business earlier. I was the kind of guy that took chips off the table to diversify. Looking back on it now, I kind of wish I'd have doubled down because, you know, if I put money in the stock market, I'm going to hope to make 10, 12, 20%, maybe XRP 150% lathe. I don't know, but I'm kidding. I took chips off the table and diversified, and I have a nice, comfortable life now. But if you invest in yourself, if I'd invested more in the Chaz Roberts law, I could 100x that. I can 1,000x it. It would have been unlimited. And so the people in my space, the lawyers that have done tremendously well, the guys that use the big firms, the huge firms that you see, they just reinvested everything.
Well, I'm a part of a product of my time, and I think everyone, and you know, we're in this social media world, and oftentimes it's a big part of our business, you know. And when you start something with this world that we live in with tiny little dopamine hits every single day, you create this idea, you fall in love with the idea, and then it's time to execute the idea. Yeah. And that was a slap in the face, a bucket of cold water on a cold morning type of feeling for me. I was like, oh, it's not just the idea is people aren't just going to go, oh, you have this idea, let me help you with it. No, you got to do the thing.
This is not a sexy response, but I learned this from my mom. Okay, my mom did not miss work ever. Okay, so I had my mom had me when she was 18 years old. Okay, a month after she turned 18. So I grew up as a single parent home, but my dad, you know, came back later in my life, and he was super charismatic, and people loved him. But I got to see two parents. My mom was just straightforward. My mom had grit. She showed up every single day. If Kathy said she was going to show up, she showed up. And she's going to show up 15 minutes early and wait in the parking lot. She just showed up. And, my dad had the charismatic side, but he didn't really capitalize on that because he didn't have the discipline and the grit. And so my advice to people is, man, you got to show up. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. You're going to have 6-hour days and you're going to have 20-hour days, but you got to show up and grind every single day. And the key to success is consistency. You want to deal with people who are consistent, and they're people of their word, right? And so that's another piece of advice. Is like, just show up every single day. Be relentless. Show up every single day.
Now, specifically with your business, being a personal injury attorney, you unfortunately have to fight these certain tropes against personal injury lawyers.
Yeah.
Ambulance chasers, billboard lawyers, whatever. What did you have to do, or was there anything that was intentional that you did to kind of separate yourself from that trope?
If I'm going to be part of a group, I'm going to make it cool. I mean, that's just the way I roll, right? If I'm going to be from Cecilia, we're going to make Cecilia cool.
Yeah.
And people are going to go to the Piggly Wiggly looking around like, well, what's all this talk about here, right? Same with personal injury lawyers. Like I know the stigma. I was probably in law school and thought the same way about personal injury lawyers. Like you see the billboards, you see the commercials, you see the gimmicks, and it's off-putting. It's off-putting. And then you have the insurance industry telling people that the reason why insurance rates are increasing is all the personal injury suits, and you see people up there with a check and stuff like that, and it's embarrassing. And so I'm in the trenches, so I see that good people, honest people like what we're describing that have grit and go to hardworking people and have kids get hurt, and they don't know what to do, and the insurance company is screwing them over. Right? And so they got to deal with how they're going to get their kids to soccer practice, how to get to work with a banged up car, their neck's hurt, their back's hurt, they need surgery. Like they didn't ask for people get killed. I've had several death cases, and I've cried with their parents and mourned with their parents, young children. And that's what I deal with. And so I know that the reality is not the stuff you see on TV. And so what I try to do is just come at it from a very authentic, honest way and say, look, these people deserve help. And I'm one of those guys that help them. And if that message came across as something different than all that other crap, then I've done my job. I don't know if that answered the question, but
no, I think it certainly did. I'm definitely intrigued about, because I don't know too much about the insurance world. I see like the headlines and that Louisianians you're just in a constant battle with the insurance companies. A lot of that is flood insurance and with the home, with all the storms that we have, but also personal injury. I mean,
a lot of people that were, I'm gonna cut you off. A lot of people that were anti lawsuit and anti this, when their homes got flooded after a storm, and you could be the most staunch anti-tort conservative guy, they changed their opinion on that when they had to deal with the insurance companies, right? And so that's a reality.
That's who you're battling in court always, right?
Insurance companies, yes. Yeah, and the way insurance companies work is they pool money. Everybody pays their premiums. They pool money. They take that money off the table and they invest it. They put it in treasury bonds and stocks, and they make money on those investments. And so the longer that they can wait to pay you out, the longer that money can sit in an investment. The less they can pay you out, the more money they can make in investment. And those are publicly traded companies. Allstate is publicly traded. State Farm is publicly traded. And stockholders enjoy the benefits of the profits. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's one of the biggest insurance owners, and he's one of the richest guys in the world. So it's big business, and who is looking out for Carter? It's just Carter. Carter's got his guitar and his podcast mic, and he's taking on Allstate, billion-dollar company. The CEO makes probably $30-40 million a year. Cool. And you got Carter and his guitar. What do you have? Well, I'll tell you what you have. You have the best court system in the world that we have to protect. And you have a guy like me that's going to say, hey, I've got the skills. I got the license. F them. Let's go after them. And that's And that's something that we should protect. And I think people need to think about that when they're trying to gut individuals' rights to take care of an insurance company under the myth that somehow that those savings will be passed down to you.
Wow.
Tort reform has never, I think our insurance premiums only go up, right? They passed tort reform a couple of years ago. They just passed another time. Insurance premiums keep on going up. COVID, nobody was driving around. They gave a temporary reduction because there was a lot of pressure on them from the government, and then you didn't see that again, right?
So how do you stay up with the times and changing, I don't know,
The
legal system or tort reform or what the insurance companies are doing?
Well, there's groups that protect the rights of the individuals that were part of those memberships, and that's important. And I think most people don't understand that because most people aren't involved in a wreck. And so they're just looking at that bill that they have to pay and say, man, this is terrible. This is a terrible idea. I don't like seeing these billboards. And they have every right to. I don't blame them for thinking that way. But when you're involved in a wreck and you're hurt and you have to deal with that system, it changes your perspective quick. And you're just as likely to get in a wreck as anyone else, certainly on these damn streets, as we're between Evangeline and Thruway right now, and we have to take Pinhook on the way back to our office. But the way I stay up is obviously I keep myself abreast of all the new laws and new changes, and I talk to them in a round table with other lawyers. How is this going to affect what we do? So I'm on the up. We get newsletters. We stay on the up, and then I'm using my platform to sort of educate the general public on those things as well.
Well, speaking of educating the general public, let's talk a little bit more about what folks can do from a personal injury standpoint to protect themselves before they get in a wreck. You've talked about it. We've made some clips of it before. I know you like your top 5, your top 3 things that people should do.
Yeah.
But list off a couple. Off the top of my head, I know you've been big on dash cams, uninsured motorist insurance. So what are some of these things and kind of explain it why people need to be doing these things before they're ever involved in a wreck?
Yeah. You have the guitar. I need to go get the drum and bang the drum.
Yeah.
The number one, I say there's 3 things that you can do. Number one, get the safest vehicle you can. Get the safest vehicle you can afford. There's consumer reports. Before you look at buying a vehicle, do a Google search of the safety ratings. Okay. Number 2 is you can drive defensively. Right. When you get to a stoplight, this is something that I said that went viral on TikTok recently. I said when you get to a stoplight, you're the first driver. You got a red light. The light turns green. Take a second and pause. Right? Because how many times have you been at a light and you see the cars fly by, even after you have a green light, and you're like, I've been killed. I've been hurt. I've been killed. If I'd have sped off. So drive defensively. And we can talk about driving defensively and merge situations, leave proper distance between you and the driver. Put that damn phone in your console. And look, I'm not saying that I've always been innocent about this. Don't text and drive. It's the killer. I think that if you wanted to gut personal injury firms in Louisiana, you would ban all phone, like they would have some kind of app that would block texting and driving, because I think that's the majority of our cases. Anytime you see a rear end situation, somebody's looking down at their phone. People used to say I was looking down at my radio. They don't even say that anymore, right?
Yeah. Well, they got all these cars now have like Apple Play and whatnot, but with that you have like voice to talk and voice to text.
Yeah,
it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, but then you got to check your typos. So drive defensively.
Yeah.
And then the third one is buy uninsured motorist coverage, and it's usually the cheapest thing you could add on into the policy. You're actually presumed to have it. They actually make you write a rejection form. And somebody's like, "Hey Carter, your premium's $350," and you're like, "Ooh, that's a lot." Well, if you just sign this form, I'll get it down to $275. You're like, "Do I need to sign it twice?"
Right.
But some good insurance agents will educate you and say, "Hey, man, that's a good thing." They make it so mechanical now. Some of the agents, they don't really care. They just want the sale. They don't want you to walk to the next guy. That they'll encourage you to sign that rejection form. Uninsured motorist coverage protects you for the fault of others. So I've been seeing a lot of hit and runs, man. Since COVID, I've seen so many hit and runs. And the reason why somebody would hit and run is because either have a warrant out for their arrest or they don't have insurance.
Right.
Okay. Mostly because they don't have insurance. And so you have a bumper on the ground, a hurt neck, your car's banged up, and there's no recourse if you don't have collision on your policy and uninsured motorists on your policy. Uninsured motorists will protect you and pay for your damages caused by somebody else. Okay. And so that's so important. When I carry a lot of insurance, I'm not worried about me crashing into someone else. That's the liability portion. I want as much uninsured motorist coverage as I can get to protect me from the crazies out there. You know, and when I talk about driving defensively, man, do you really want to drive from midnight to 3 a.m. around Jefferson Street? Is that really a good choice? Probably not. Drunk drivers, kids, whatever. And what kind of insurance do they have? So that's my three sort of pieces of advice. Save vehicle, drive defensively, get uninsured motorist coverage.
Now, this is just an observation that I have, and I could be completely wrong on it, but I feel like in the past 4 or 5 years or so, I've seen less and less than I did. I got here in Lafayette in 2012, for college, and then throughout those times, I saw a bunch of drunk driving stops or DUI checkpoints. Yeah, I feel like I don't see them anymore at the usual suspect spots. I mean, I used to see them all the time around the Cajun Dome, in front of Fatima. Yeah, I don't see them as much anymore. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're not wrong. In my former life, I handled OWIs, and I probably had about 1,200 to 1,500 that I've handled over my life. I was a public defender for a while, and that was my track. Plus, I did it privately. And they had an ATAC unit with Lafayette City Police, and there was grant money. They were specially trained. They were always on the lookout.
I still see the truck parked every now and then, but
they're still very capable of giving out OWIs. Don't get it twisted. But I think that there's a function of there's not as much patrols and as much resources and manpower, coupled with I think the drinking patterns of today's youth is different than 2012.
Not to mention Uber and Lyft.
Not to mention Uber. When I was in college from 2002 to 2009, college and law school, Uber was just coming around towards the tail end, and we like to drink. And I don't see the same drinking patterns now with kids. I think kids are more likely to, I say kids, I mean, they're more likely to.
Young adults.
They don't go to the bars. In fact, this is off topic, but you see a lot of bars rebrand and cater to the 30 to 40-year-olds than the 18 to 26-year-olds. Yeah, because they're still trying to get that old nostalgia group. Your observation is on point.
Well, yeah, there's so many different factors that could play into it. Some of the ones that you said, but there's so much comfort in. I mean, we're both big sports fans, and I know big sports leagues are having trouble with this. You almost have a better viewing experience watching it from home than you do at the game. Yeah, and just with Netflix and all these different streaming things and the access to fast, affordable internet. It's more easier to stay at home and shoot. DoorDash, you can order a case of beer to your house.
Legalization of marijuana.
Yeah, it's another one.
Right. At-home entertainment systems, Facebook, Instagram, social media, Tinder. Like, why do you go to the bar? To meet chicks, right? Yeah, right. when you're 20 years old, right?
I can get that on delivery? Nice.
Yeah, I mean, that phone is more powerful than Marley's. Yeah. So it's all those things.
So getting back into the road, right? I'm from Covington, and the thing that I hate the most about driving home, besides having to drive through Baton Rouge, which is always a nightmare. Yes. You went to LSU for both undergrad and for law school, so you get it. But I-12 basically created, as from my understanding, as a way for 18-wheelers to not have to go through New Orleans, right? And so you're like white knuckling a lot of the time 100%. Going through I-12. And so, but at the same time, the pandemic and what happened in Canada a couple of years ago has shown how vulnerable our system is to collapsing. If we lose our truck drivers, the system will fall apart so quickly. So I don't even really have a question here, but do you have any sort of nuanced take about 18-wheelers. I mean, so many times you see these commercials and the billboards of a personal injury lawyer standing on top of an 18-wheeler. You know, that's the one that everyone's being made like the evil villain in all of this.
Yeah, I have empathy for truck drivers, right? So they can only make so much money. The fuel costs, they've had to deal with that. They've had to deal with insurance costs. They can only drive a certain amount of hours per day. The dispatch company is taking a piece of the pie. Like, they're getting squeezed from all directions. And they got to deal with untrained drivers. If you get a CDL, like, you have a good bit of training compared to how easy it is to get a license. And so I drove 12 coming back from Orange Beach a couple days ago, and it is amazing how many cars will just speed by you on 90 miles an hour and cut you off between you and an 18-wheel. It is super unsafe.
Yeah.
And
yeah, more often than not, that you mentioned it, it's more the other drivers.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the truck drivers are getting squeezed. There's a lot of stuff that we need to transport across the country. The roads are in terrible condition. There's terrible drivers out there. Their costs are soaring. Inflation has taken a toll on them. And so I empathize with them, but there's also companies that cut corners and put bad drivers to cut corners and not get qualified drivers. We see guys that I was involved in a big case in Texas. The guy didn't even have a U.S. license, right? He had no business driving on American roads. He was supposed to drop off his load at the Mexican border, but he just kept on coming through. And there's all these shell games that were created and shell companies that are created. So, yeah, I mean, it's the wild, wild west. But if you get in a wreck with an 18-wheeler, they should have a lot more coverage than the normal policy. So those are typically bigger cases, and they're also bigger cases because typically the injuries are worse. Right? Because you're dealing with a massive vehicle going at a high rate of speed. You need a good lawyer, man. Right? And so you need someone like us. There's other good lawyers that you may not see on billboards or commercials, and you should get a good lawyer.
Yeah, walk me through. You don't have to get super in the weeds, obviously, with time constraints. But
I don't want to put anyone to sleep.
But just from the kind of start to finish, what you're doing with your client when someone comes to you for a personal injury case.
Ooh, man, what does Nick Saban do? Well, Nick Saban's retired, but what does Nick Saban do when he was the coach at Alabama? Well, number one is he washes the uniforms. He makes sure the uniforms are washed, and about a billion other things. Yeah, right. That's an analogy that my father-in-law told me one time, and it's always stuck when people say, well, "What do you do?" It's a lot. Yeah. Right. But so we get people right after the wreck, and man, we help them get a rental, get their car repaired or totaled out, get them fair compensation for their property damage. We call that property damage. But then also, like bodily injury, we help them get the best care possible. If you come to me and you've been in a car wreck and you're like, man, my neck's hurt, my back's hurt, my shoulders hurt, my knees hurt, you're not going to know what doctor to go see. You're going to go to the emergency room. The emergency room is going to say, here, take these pills, you're good. Here's $5,000 bill, right? So we help navigate all that system and get people the best care possible, and we take care of all that for them to help guide them through and help them through that while dealing with the insurance company, while negotiating, once they're completely healed or the best they possibly can, a fair settlement to not only cover their medical bills, their time away from work, but cover their pain and suffering too. They got to get something out of it. It sounds bad to talk about money. Right? It sounds bad, but that is the civil system. That is the best system that we figured out on earth to handle a dispute like this, right? Because we can't call Doc and say, hey, let's get in the DeLorean and go back in time to pre-accident. And we don't want two people fighting over stones and sticks or shooting each other because they have a dispute. We say money. Money is the best way that we figured out how we can compensate someone for what they've been through for a wrong, which is called a tort. And so we walk through the client, and that could be 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, it could be whatever, depending on the size of the case, how badly they're injured, what insurance is available. That dictates the timeline.
you had a client on, I can't remember her name on one of the episodes.
Crystal.
Yeah, Crystal. It's a great episode. You kind of see from the client's perspective of what someone's going through.
That was very cool that she agreed, and I think she offered to do it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was tremendous.
And I just didn't realize like the amount of time that you're talking with them about, what to do when you get this lump sum of money. Like you went to the bank with her.
Yeah.
I love like the line you said, like, hey, you don't wait at the teller. Like,
yeah. She went
with
to,
this amount of money.
She had a big check and she was going to the bank, and the bank was next door. And I said, well, I'll walk with you. I'll come with you to the bank. And I'm sitting down in the lobby, and she goes to me with the teller, and I was like, hey, with those zeros behind it, you don't wait with the teller. We talk to the manager, and we pulled her out into an office. Yeah. But look, I don't, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man a fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. I want to use this bad thing that happened to our client's life, and I want to make it a positive, and I want it to help start their financial journey. And, people don't, newsflash, by the way, they don't teach finance in school.
Nope.
Right? They don't teach you how to invest your money in school. I
think they just passed a bill that starting maybe next year, it's going to be part of high school curriculum, some sort of financial wellness. But
man, that's overdue.
Yeah,
in my opinion, I had to learn this stuff on the fly.
Sure.
And I had a pretty good foundation. My aunt got me a bank account when I was 4 years old, so I had a good. She was a banker, and so I had a little checkbook, and I do anything I can to help people. Even after the representation. I mean, you spend 6 months with a client, a year with a client, 2 years, they become your friends.
Yeah.
And I want them to succeed even beyond me, because I want them to look back and say, hey, man, Chaz really helped me.
Yeah. But the reason these people are being compensated, unfortunately, is because of injury. But with that, you've made relationships with different doctors in town. And, how did you develop and cultivate those relationships with people that you can trust?
That's a good question, man. It's feedback from clients. And so it's nothing, it's all above board, right? They're not doing anything specifically for me or for the client, but you develop relationships by getting feedback from clients. Hey, you sent me to Dr. So-and-so. He was super nice. He was super thorough. He spent 30 minutes with me. And so-and-so did a neck surgery. Man, I feel amazing. I feel great. I feel wonderful. I feel better than I did before. Over 15 years, you see those patterns, and then you say, and then one doctor on the other hand is like, man, he was rude. He was ugly. He didn't do anything for me. Okay, well, is that a one-time thing, or is that I've heard that from multiple people. If I've heard from multiple people, he's out. He's out. Because anyone I send you to, and that's for financial help, doctors, gift baskets, I don't care. It has to be a positive representation of me. Because when you refer a case to me, if you're a family lawyer and you send me a case, I'm going to make you look good. Your client's going to thank you for sending a recommendation. So it's just feedback. And then, as the relationships have developed, I've had lunch with them and got to know their personality and who they are as a man or a woman. And, it's just experience.
Yeah, that's a type of guest I'd like to see on your show at some point. A doctor that you trust and can maybe talk about some of these.
Well, I have a joke. All right, here's the joke. The joke says, so when a client complains because they come in with me for an hour and I got my feet on the desk and I'm BSing about a high school football game or whatever, and we're like old buddies, and then we send them to an orthopedic surgeon. And they got the personality of a stick. I say, well, you know why they're doctors, right? Why? Because if they had a personality, they'd be a lawyer. And so that's a way to kind of break the ice with the client. Like, people are different. Some doctors have personalities, some don't. Like, they work on brains all day. What do you expect?
Very a lot of analytical.
Analytical, man. I see blood and I get weak. I mean, it's a totally different skill set. So I talk for a living.
So do you have to look at injuries, like pictures of?
Oh man, yes, yeah.
That's gotta be.
I've in the last 2 weeks, I've seen someone's head cut open, autopsy. I saw another injury that I don't want to share it here, but yeah, it's terrible.
Oh man,
it's terrible, and you don't really get desensitized to it. I have gotten desensitized about talking about large sums of money. I'll tell you that much. That's
fascinating.
Yeah, just in the mix, man. I have a lot of cases, and so we're negotiating, and the more desensitized you become, the better you become, because I could ask you for $1.4 million with a straight face, and there's no hesitation. I'm not shaking. I'm not scared. I'm like, no, this case, we need $1.4 million, and I'm not taking a cent less, and I mean it, right? So I've become desensitized to large amounts of money and transactional and even some emotional stuff. But man, seeing blood and bad injuries, that's still tough, because that's a person's mom, that's a person's wife. It's terrible.
Well, that is. I'm glad you're not desensitized to the injury aspect.
I'm never going to be desensitized to the plight that people go through in everyday normal life and life circumstances and upbringing and childhood trauma and all that stuff. That's real.
Yeah, it's got to make you work your ass off even more. Seeing what
I want to run through the freaking wall, man.
Mm-hmm.
I want to run through the wall, and what's cool is I've surrounded myself with people in our office that want to run through the wall just as much as me. And if you don't want to run through the wall, you're probably not going to be a good fit at our organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of your brand, Chaz, is this education component and just peeling back the curtain.
Yeah.
If that is the education level of that you like to get to, and I've got a question for you, and it doesn't have to do with anything that you do specifically, but more so from an information standpoint. We have these elections for like judges. I don't know, like a circuit. I don't even know what the term would be. But
well, you got district judges, and then you have Court of Appeals judges, you got Supreme Court judges.
Okay.
It's elected.
Yeah. So those elected positions, I never am able to find, maybe like a couple of days before an election, I see they're on the ballot. I'll try and like scour the internet for some sort of information. But how do we find out about, like, what do these people do? Why is it important for them to vote? And how do we find information about these human beings that we're electing to a very important position?
Yeah, I don't know what the public works official does. Like, I can say that about most elected positions. I really don't know what they do, but I know a lot about judges, and I think that a judge, what I look for in a judge, well, first of all, to answer your question, I would talk to me or another type of lawyer who can educate you on why that person would be a good judge or not a good judge. But what I would look for is what was the diversity of their training, of their experience before they became a judge, and were they a hard worker? Were they fair? Were they diligent? Were they professional? Those are some of the traits that I would look for. But you couldn't have. There's no public forum on that. You would probably have to talk to a lawyer to see what type of interactions they had with those judicial candidates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how to even go about doing this, but I would just, spitting off the top of my head, I would love to have some sort of panel with unbiased, or maybe there is a bias and it's more of a debate, but whatever it is, some sort of forum via podcast leading up to these type of elections to just kind of put information about these people out for the public to give the voters a little more education when it comes to what they're voting for, who they're voting for.
I think that'd be a great idea, and I could probably help you craft some questions.
Yeah.
To see their insights, right? They can't tell you about how they would rule in a certain way, but you can get some insights to see if that more aligns with your philosophy or not.
Mm-hmm. So law have mercy. I'm excited to see what it becomes in 2025. We just had a meeting with the team to kind of create goals and expectations and what we want to do with it going forward. But for some episodes in the past, can you shout out a couple of your favorites for folks to go check out?
I'm really proud of the G Park episode that we just filmed with Hypno, Innocence Project New Orleans. Like, I almost see myself as a curator, and like the things that I'm interested in, and I want to expose people that don't have access to that type of thing.
Yeah. And
I had a couple people reach out to me and say, hey, that was an awesome episode. I wasn't expecting that, but G Park, she's the director of Hypno, and she talked about like the holes in our criminal judicial system, and she talked about some of the exonerations that they were able to procure for innocent people who were facing life in prison or even death. And so I was really proud about that episode. Obviously, Gerald Grunig brought the energy, man, and his story and his love for the community and that kind of thing was awesome. Cupid was fantastic. All of our lawyers were amazing. Like to think that somebody would give an hour of their time, an hour and a half of their time to come sit and basically let me scour their brain and give information to the public for free is really cool.
Yeah, I desperately and I want to get Benny Benezet on this show because every time he comes on your show, he's a friend of yours. You guys have a natural rapport, but just the nuggets that he's able to spill. He's a criminal defense attorney.
Yeah.
And my favorite line that he's ever said is, like why we need criminal defense attorneys. And you could say it a lot better than I could.
Yeah, he said you protect the rights of the innocent by representing the guilty. And so when you see a traffic stop and it's somebody with drugs, but the traffic stop wasn't done correctly, and that person walks free because of a criminal defense attorney, if you're skeptical, you're going to say, man, I can't believe he was guilty and this and that. That's not right. But that is a person pushing against the state to follow the Constitution. And you have a Fourth Amendment right against unlawful search and seizure. And so he's really protecting Carter's bedroom from a battering ram kicking his door down and going get some things, and it could be because they a mistaken identity. It could be because Carter was on the wrong side politically of the people in power. And so I am very proud of the time that I spent in the criminal defense world, and I think that a lot of those criminal defense lawyers are heroes, man. And it growing up the way I grew up, being around the people, it's hard to imagine that I would ever be saying that, but I had boots on the ground and I got to see that. And you need strong lawyers that may not be representing the best guys, but they're protecting your constitutional rights, and that's all you have in this world. And in America is your constitutional rights, the freedoms that we enjoy.
Yeah, it's such a great point.
You need to put some of that patriotic music in the background while I say that part, right? Yeah. Like off on a complete rant.
Yeah, absolutely. Just slowly zoom in.
Yeah,
have an eagle pop on your shoulder.
Benny's a great guest. I'm trying to get him back on my podcast. If he sits right here, he will fill you up with an hour of rants and theories, and you're gonna be like, man, I want to run through that wall right now.
Yeah. We had the very first episode we did was a test episode that we did here.
That's right.
In the old studio, and that was before like you were comfortable kind of interjecting and whatnot, and it was just him basically just spewing for an hour.
Woo! Man, he can spew, man. He can spew. And look, it's probably 95% right. There's some 5%. He might take some creative liberties, but yeah.
Hey, that's an A right there.
That's an A. That's right.
Well, Chaz, I appreciate you joining us. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and work with you. I'm excited to see where Law of Mercy goes. Before I get you out of here, just a couple of some rapid fire questions. First off, one of your big things that you like sharing on social media is this recent, the past few years, avid love for running.
Yeah.
Right now, it's getting a little chilly outside.
Yes, it is.
What's it like running in the cold?
It's way better than running in the heat.
I just remember soccer and like all the running we have to do and during this time of year, and it's like having trouble breathing.
It's not the same like that sprint like burn in your throat. It's not the same.
Yeah.
You want to run in the cold because you can always layer and take off layers as you start sweating. Running in 90-degree weather is a non-starter, especially here with the humidity. So I love the cold weather.
Okay.
Yeah. Louisiana Marathon is MLK weekend. It's always notoriously cold, and people have great times because then when it gets to about 9, 10 a.m., it feels amazing, right?
Yeah. You're from Cecilia, next to the Bro Bridge, the crawfish capital of the world.
Yes.
How do you boil crawfish, or do you dust?
No, you do before and after. You put
before and after. Okay.
you put seasoning in the water and you dust it on top.
See, that was one of the biggest misconceptions that I had to tell all my friends and family back in Covington is that they were like, oh, them out west in the Lafayette, Acadiana area, they just boil in just pure water and then season it later. I haven't seen anyone do that.
No, we see. Look, when I was younger, I remember seasoning the water almost exclusively, and then the dusting became like last probably 10, 12 years.
Really?
Maybe longer.
Okay.
But dusting on top as well. But in no scenario is it just no seasoning in the water. Because you need seasoning for your potatoes and your corn anyway, right?
Right.
So no, that is a myth, and I am busting it. And trust me, crawfish capital oil, St. Martin Parish, I know.
Yeah, that's what people in like Alabama do.
Yeah, right.
Dude,
I've seen people put orange juice and stuff. And all
well,
kinds of
here's what we do. We take my family takes a recipe from the St. Bernard Parish area where we before the boil we'll puree like a bunch of oranges and a bunch of lemons. So a lot of people will just like squeeze them into it, but we'll cut up the rind, and that's where you get a lot of that zest, and then create this kind of like we call it the slush, or the slurry. But it looks like this bright yellow orangish slurry that you put when the crawfish are soaking. And so the juices really get soaked up and you get that citrusy flavor into it. It's a game changer. And I've done it around here. Every time people are like, what are you doing? And then they taste it like, oh, it's actually pretty damn good.
Pat's Restaurant in Henderson.
Okay.
My grandmother's sister helped open it. She was married to Pat, the original. And so my grandmother she worked double shifts she lost her husband at a young age. She worked double shifts every single day. And so forever. And that was one of the first places that commercially sold crawfish in a restaurant setting. And so you got to think about that. Like crawfish you can get crawfish etouffee at Walk-Ons, which is a chain. You can get it in Texas. Pat's right here in Henderson was one of the first places to serve crawfish commercially.
Wow.
Just think about it, man. It was a mud bug,
Yeah.
right? It was trash. People ate that because they were starving, right? Like most good delicacies now
Lobster.
came out of a necessity. And so, fun fact. So I know what I'm talking about my ball of crawfish. Is what my point was.
Hell yes. Stand on it. Potato salad, in or out of the gumbo?
You got to go in.
In.
You got to go in, but I can put it out, but take a little spoonful and mix it in at the same time. So I can do either way. But I think, man, my grandmother who passed away a couple years ago made the best potato salad. It was smooth, mustard based. I mean, my mouth is watering right now. But I also like sweet potatoes in my gumbo too.
Ew.
Like not in it, but just on the side.
Okay.
A good baked sweet potato on the side, man, change your life.
Here's a question I've asked people recently.
And chow chow, lots of chow chow.
A lot of chow. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of chow chow.
Well, I've asked people their least favorite street to drive on in Lafayette, but what I'll ask you instead, being a personal injury lawyer, what is the most dangerous street to drive on in Lafayette?
Oh man, Pinhook is a beast. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that road was made for horse and buggy.
Yeah, that's what Drake LeBlanc, the episode before you, said that. Yeah, it was for carriages. That's why it's so small.
Yeah, and I don't think they want to cut those big oak trees on the side.
Right.
So I think that's just going to be the way it is. Right. So that has to be one of the most dangerous roads. For a while, till people got the hang of the roundabouts, those were pretty tricky.
I was going to ask you about the roundabouts.
Ambassador, a lot of wrecks on Ambassador because people drive so damn fast on it. I mean, I can hear from my house, people race all night long on Ambassador Caffrey. So that's a pretty dangerous road, too.
Why in a pileup, the person, let's say, car A is moving, car B hits car A, car C hits car B, who's most at fault?
So instead of A, B, C, we call it 1, 2, 3.
All right.
Okay, so car 3 is the front car. All right, car 2 is the middle car. So number 1 in that scenario, car 3 could recover from both people that hit. Okay, so this one is at fault and the one in the back is at fault. But typically what you'll see is the last car will hit the second car into the third car. That's more common.
Okay.
This one was able to stop just in the nick of time, and then one comes, just cleans out the whole clock.
Okay. And is car 2 at fault at all in that?
No.
Okay.
No. Unless there's 2 hits, car 2 is not at fault. If it's 1 hit, it's just the one in the back.
Oh man, yeah, I could ask you questions all day about it, and we're definitely going to get you back on some point next year, and we'll just keep doing this and keep growing these podcasts, and
Let's do it.
And create an opportunity in Acadiana for people to be entertained, educated. That because media is changing. Like my old news station, News 15, just gutted half their programming. And so
Where do you see daytime television in the next couple years?
I don't know there's always going to be people who are sitting at home wanting to be entertained. I feel like as older generations retire or die out, to be blunt, people who have more been accustomed and grown up to the internet will be more comfortable finding alternate sources. But there's always going to be a need for local news and information, whether that's through traditional broadcasting channels. I don't know if it will be that. Maybe you're seeing these local news stations who are owned mostly by giant corporations try and figure out what that is and these viewing patterns and
how can we spend the least amount and get the most return, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so many businesses.
They gutted all their mainstay anchors. Do people not care about anchors anymore?
Well, no, there's a lot of the evening. They're pushing them toward the evening, but in the morning, at the end of the day, most people, it's a lot of times it's mothers who are getting their kids ready for work, and they want to know one of two things. So, do I need to, what is my kid going to wear today, and did anyone get murdered in my neighborhood? And so that information is more readily available the second they wake up and can just look at their phone, be like, hey, got the weather. So I don't know where it goes, but I definitely see the power structure being shifted more towards independence. So it's going to take people like you, like myself, people like a Chris Logan, and others who are kind of doing this independent thing, and trying to be a voice that people can trust. And that's what I love about podcasting. We were talking about it earlier. It's this fly on the wall thing. That's why I like the Q&A thing. It can work in some forms, but I think people really get value out of that fly on the wall. And because people can, kind of explain in their talking and just their banter, like where they come from, whether it's, morally or politically or whatever. So you understand it's not just a guy in a suit pretending to be objective. You can take it or leave it depending on what this person is like. And it's just a matter of, Louisiana's always late to adopt things. And so it's just keep doing it and keep growing and getting people to buy in and trust and make it more accessible and educate people of how to find it and just go from there and just keep doing the damn thing.
Yeah, so I would tell anyone listening to this or watching this, if you're considering a podcast, do it, right? Because I'm at 50-some episodes now. Trust me, I was at 1 episode. I was at 2 episodes. I was 3 episodes. I had imposter syndrome, thinking, what the hell am I doing? Nobody's going to listen to me. I had all those feelings, all those insecurities. But you have to have reps to develop your voice and to figure out the direction you want to go. And in 6 months from now, after you start, you're going to be happy that you started.
Right.
At 2 years, who knows what's going to happen to you?
Yeah.
So
consistency is key too. You got to be able to, or willing to be consistent and put in the work and
that's much harder than you think.
Yeah.
Right. To find the time. I'm a busy guy. I have 2 kids that take all my time, and I have a very busy practice. But I still have to go up in the attic and film because that's very important.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I have people all the time be like, dude, like me and my partners, like, we're funny. Like, we just put a mic on us. Like, we'll have like, people would love us. I was like, maybe. Right. But how consistent can you be? You're going to do 3 or 4 episodes. You're going to run out of talking points, and you're going to realize how much work it is, and then it's going to fizzle. Like, what's like 7 episodes is like the statistic that people get to? It was
like 2.3 million podcasts were created. 700,000 made it past 7 episodes. 200,000 made it past. The numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
Of the drop off.
Yeah.
And another piece of advice I have is if you're thinking about doing a podcast, call Carter.
Hey.
Don't try to do it yourself. Okay. And even if you have the $30,000 that it takes to buy the equipment, you still need someone to operate the equipment. You also have to have the 100 hours that it takes to learn how to work the cameras and the roadcaster and the mic and everything else and the front. Call Carter. Let him do it. Even if you have the cameras. I do have the cameras. I have the cameras, the mics, I have everything.
Yeah.
Carter still does it for me.
Yeah, in your case, yeah, I use my early equipment, then I've upgraded since. But in the meantime, you saw the value in buying your own equipment and keeping it in-house. And I just come and use your stuff.
The reason why I did it, and that was my thesis, and it actually ended up working out, is that Carter could just come in and it'll take him 5 minutes to set up instead of 35 minutes to set up.
Or an hour.
And going up those stairs are pretty treacherous. So with that flexibility, we could do more podcasts on a shorter heads up, and he doesn't have to pull down all his stuff. And so, man, it's been great.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to see where it goes. I appreciate you once again. Real quick, tell folks where to find you, social media, website, all that.
I've been told that you should tell people to no more than one call of action.
Okay.
But I'm going to do two. Chaz Roberts Law on any social platform. Instagram is kind of where the bulk of our content is published. Chaz Roberts Law, ChazRobertsLaw. And check out our podcast, Law Have Mercy. You're going to hear Carter occasionally. It's great. It's been fun. And I'm just trying to educate the public.
Yeah, man. And free third plug, ChazRobertsLaw.com if you're ever in need of a personal injury attorney. And he's also got a great resource center. If you just need someone to ask a question about some sort of legal thing that's happening to you, they'll point you in the right direction. He's got a wide range of friends and respected colleagues in the law industry that he can point you to, and he's a great resource for this community. Great father, great husband, great business associates, great podcaster now. And Chaz, no better thing to do for you than roll out the red carpets, quoting, paraphrasing Hot Ones, but also taking a bit from Whiskey Ginger. I like to give my guests a platform, taking a look at that camera right there, and it could be a word, a phrase, it could be advice. It could be literally anything to end this episode with, to impart the internet world at large with some Chaz Roberts wisdom.
All right. Treat others how you want to be treated, right? And that's a golden rule, and it's served me well in my career. So always treat others how you want to be treated.